Of course, here's a more refined and engaging version of your story. I never imagined I'd find myself questioning my own sense of fairness, but here I am, wondering if I've truly done something wrong. I'm 34 years old, and my daughter Olivia, 17, has been the center of my world since the day she was born. Her father, Martin, and I had her when we were just 17 ourselves, barely out of high school and completely unprepared for parenthood. Against all odds and despite the objections of our families, we chose to raise her together. It wasn't easy. We worked tirelessly, balancing jobs and our studies, determined to give Olivia the best life we could manage. There were countless moments when she had to go without things her classmates took for granted. Trendy clothes, extravagant birthday parties, the latest gadgets. But she never lacked love, support, or the essentials. Over time, Martin and I amicably parted ways but remained committed co-parents, always putting Olivia first. Eventually, I built a successful career, bought my own house, and, 4 years ago, married Caleb, a wonderful man who had also been through a divorce. Caleb has a son, Ian, who is 15, from his previous marriage. While I've always been respectful and polite to Ian, we don't share a particularly close bond. He splits his time between our home and his mother's, and with my demanding job, I don't see him often. The limited time I do have, I prioritize spending with Olivia, my husband, and close friends. From the very start, I was upfront with Caleb. I made it clear that my daughter would always be my priority, just as Ian would be his. He understood and agreed. Olivia and Caleb have a cordial but distant relationship, which doesn't surprise me. She's always been reserved, not one to easily warm up to new people. It's not hostility, just a quiet understanding between them. When Olivia was 12, Martin and I made a decision that would shape her future. We started saving diligently, pooling our resources to buy her an apartment. Given the economic challenges in Latin America, we knew how difficult it would be for her to own property at a young age. It was a long-term plan, one we committed to years ago, long before Caleb or Ian were in my life. Now, with the apartment nearly paid off, my husband is upset. He believes I'm being unfair for prioritizing Olivia this way, arguing that Ian should receive something similar. But Ian has 2 parents who are both financially stable. Caleb and his ex-wife have their own arrangements for their son's future, just as Martin and I made ours for Olivia. I don't see why my daughter should have to sacrifice something we worked so hard for just to maintain an artificial sense of balance. Despite my reasoning, Caleb insists that I'm being selfish, that I'm playing favorites. But to me, this isn't favoritism. It's simply following through on a commitment I made long ago. So, am I truly in the wrong here? From the moment my daughter Olivia was born, she became my world. Now, at 17, she is strong, independent, and determined, qualities that I deeply admire. When Martin and I had her at just 17 ourselves, we struggled immensely, juggling work and studies to provide for her. She never went without necessities, but there were times when she saw her classmates enjoying things she simply couldn't have. It wasn't easy, but we made it through, and despite eventually breaking up, Martin and I remained dedicated co-parents, always prioritizing Olivia's well-being. Over the years, I built a successful career, purchased my own home, and found love again with Caleb, whom I married 4 years ago. He, too, had been through a divorce and had a 15-year-old son, Ian. While I've always been respectful toward Ian, we never developed a particularly close relationship. He spends time between our home and his mother's, and with my demanding work schedule, we rarely interact. Most of my free time is spent with Olivia, my husband, or my close friends. From the start, I made it clear to Caleb that Olivia would always be my first priority, just as Ian was his. He accepted this, or so I believed. When Olivia was 12, Martin and I made a significant decision for her future. We recognize how difficult it is for young adults to own property, especially in Latin America, so we began saving to buy her an apartment. But knowing our daughter's personality, her stubbornness, independence, and strong sense of pride, we devised a plan to ensure she took ownership of the process. Instead of purchasing a move-in-ready place, we bought a large apartment in a nearby city that was in terrible condition. It needed extensive renovations and was completely empty. When Olivia was 14, we put the apartment in her name but made it clear that while the property was hers, she would have to work to fund the renovations and furnish it herself. She embraced the challenge wholeheartedly. Shortly after, she took on part-time jobs and worked tirelessly, saving as much as she could. While she focused on her studies in her final year of secondary school, I coordinated the renovation process. By the time she was ready to leave for university, she had purchased all the furniture, and the apartment had been beautifully transformed. At the beginning of the month, she moved out, ready to start this new chapter of her life. Caleb was impressed by the way we handled things and told me he wanted to do something similar for Ian. However, he planned to purchase a fully renovated and furnished apartment for him. He had already spoken to his ex-wife and her husband, and they had agreed to contribute. That's when he turned to me, expecting me to do the same. I refused. I explained my reasons. My mother is battling cancer, and out of all my siblings, I'm the only one who can afford to pay for her treatment. On top of that, Martin and I decided to cover all of Olivia's living expenses, utilities, groceries, and a monthly allowance, so that she can focus on her studies, make new friends, and adapt to life in a big city without financial stress. Caleb was furious. He accused me of being unfair and insisted that, as Ian's stepmother, I had a responsibility to contribute. He even suggested that Olivia should get a job since she would be turning 18 soon. That's when I lost my patience. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that Martin and I are the only ones who will decide how to raise Olivia and what to provide for her. I reminded him that I had always been upfront about my daughter being my priority. I made it clear that he was delusional if he thought I would leave my daughter to fend for herself just so he could afford to buy an apartment for his son. No matter what, Olivia will always come first. That's the way it has always been, and that's the way it will remain. I tried to be reasonable with Caleb. I told him that while I couldn't contribute to buying Ian an apartment right now, I would be willing to help in the future, whether that meant assisting with furnishing the place or covering some of his living expenses once he moved in. But at this moment, with everything going on in my life, it simply wasn't possible. That wasn't enough for him. He accused me of favoring my daughter, then stormed out. Since that moment, he hasn't spoken to me. I refuse to apologize because, in my heart, I truly don't believe I've done anything wrong. I understand that Caleb doesn't earn as much as I do. I know that his ex-wife and her husband aren't in a strong financial position either, and that without my help, buying an apartment for Ian may not be possible. But that isn't my fault. Right now, my priorities lie elsewhere. My mother is battling cancer, and I'm the only one in my family with the means to support her treatment. On top of that, Martin and I have made a commitment to Olivia. We want her to have the best chance at success, to focus on her studies, to build friendships, and to adjust to living on her own without the added pressure of financial stress. That's what we worked toward for years, and I refuse to take that away from her. Some of my friends have told me that when you marry someone with a child, you take on the responsibility of that child as well. That I should be treating Ian the same way I treat Olivia. But to be honest, I think that's ridiculous. Ian has both a mother and a father who love him and provide for him. He has never once looked to me as a parental figure, nor have we formed the kind of bond that would make treating him like my own child feel natural. The truth is, I don't love Ian the way I love Olivia. I never could. That kind of love isn't something you can force. It's something that happens naturally over time, and in our case, it simply hasn't. We've barely spent any time together, and while I care about him and want him to be okay, he isn't my child. And I don't believe that's wrong. What makes this even more frustrating is a double standard. Caleb doesn't treat Olivia the way he treats Ian, and I've never expected him to. I've never demanded that he love her like a daughter, buy her gifts, or make financial sacrifices for her. So why is it suddenly unfair when I do the same? At the end of the day, Olivia will always be my priority. That's not something I'm willing to apologize for.